Good news can often get overlooked or buried by the negative in our everyday lives. So let's change that. I'm Adriana.
And I'm Wyatt.
We're just two ordinary people without any special qualifications or anything, trying to navigate life. We invite you to join us as we share wholesome stories, news articles of hope, and ideas about how we can all make the world just a little bit brighter. We are Uplifting Positive Stories. Welcome back to another episode of Uplifting Positive Stories. Thanks for joining us, everybody.
Hello once again from the fairly
past.
distant past. This will possibly likely be our last of the batch recordings we did prior to us going into labor and having a child to care for and stuff. We really tried to build as much as we could in advance, so we could just focus on, taking care of the newborn.
Some people make batches of freezer meals. We make batches of podcast
I mean, we
episodes.
did that too.
We did that
We did that too.
We also did batch podcast
So
episodes.
from here on out, we're going to probably have a very different perception of things and different takes and maybe look a little more tired on the video. We'll see how well we're able to wake ourselves up for future recordings and such.
Yes. Well, thanks for joining us for today's episode. Today's episode is all about looking out for others. So all about when people are in need or if they seem like they might be in a situation where they could just have an extra pair of eyes to help out or whatever it could be, being that person to step up and help. And so, we'll dive right in. We got a lot of different ones that are kind of interesting to discuss. So this first one is from the subreddit Benign Existence, and it is titled, Anonymous Hiker Watching Out for Me. The other day, I went for a local hike with my dog. It was about a 2.5-hour hike round trip up to a lookout peak and back down.
It's a pretty long hike.
That is a long hike. I misjudged the timing and I ended up doing the last 20 minutes in the dark. Like I would have lost the trail if I hadn't had my phone. It was a cloudy night and no help from the moon. The whole time I was feeling so dumb, especially because I was the last hiker out. When I had left from the peak, there was one other hiker up there, a young woman who passed me up, just as I started on my way down. So I knew I was alone on the trail, and I knew that a small mishap, like just tripping on a rock or a root, could have me stranded there with no help. The last bit in the dark was a little sketchy, and I was a bit stressed. When I got to the parking lot, the young woman who'd passed me was waiting in her car. As soon as I got to my car, she took off. I'm pretty sure she saw that I'd be the last one out there alone after dark, and she waited in her car to make sure that I got out okay. I found that kindness to be really touching, and if it was just coincidence and she was hanging out in her car for some other reason, I'm still sticking to my story and sending her best wishes of gratitude and good karma.
Wow.
That is a thing, we've heard that a lot.
Well, hopefully it wasn't this other hiker had to wait super long. I guess it depends on how long they were. The OP was up at the peak,
right? Yeah, but that was super thoughtful and nice that they did that to keep an eye out just in case to be able to call for help if they didn't come down. And that's the thing we hear a lot about. It's number one, never stray from the path if you're hiking. Don't go off path, especially in places that are up in Minnesota, it's a little less, there's less animals and stuff like that. There still are stuff that's a little dangerous, but
there's still some bobcats potentially out there.
It's still
cougars,
dangerous,
occasional.
but
it's not common, but they are out there.
But you hear, especially in the more rocky places, in Utah, Zion, or in Arizona with going to the Grand Canyon and stuff like that. If you go off trail or if you slip, it can be really dangerous. And so making sure that you're looking, if you are hiking, it's nice to look out for other people that you see that might be struggling and really be careful when you go and stuff like that, and help make sure that everyone else is also being careful if you're going with a group, because it can be dangerous, in the situation, and kind of scary. So, very cool that this person did that. They didn't obviously have to do that, staying in their car and waiting. But the fact that they did that, it's very, very thoughtful. So, very cool. Looking out for people.
Yeah.
All right. Our next subreddit here, this one comes from the subreddit Ask Reddit. And the question was, what's the sweetest thing that someone has ever done for you? This one here says, a few years ago, I was living with my father, but spent almost every night and day at my girlfriend's dorm. My girlfriend has no parents and had been living off of her Pell Grants and what little money that I made at Papa John's or wherever the heck I was working at the time. I ran into a former coworker at Walmart while I was shopping. We worked at a McDonald's together, I do remember that. She was always really nice and was really cool / funny to talk to and joke with. Typical 18-year-old dudes making jokes and passes at this wonderful 30-something woman. She always fired right back with good comebacks and a laugh. I hadn't seen her for a solid 2 years probably. She greeted me with a hug and a smile and asked me what I was doing with my life, blah blah blah. She noticed I wasn't getting a lot of food, was getting cheap stuff and etc. and asked why. I told her what the dealio was, told her about mine and my girlfriend's situation, and she immediately offered to buy us groceries. I was alone, she'd never met my girlfriend. She walked me around, telling me about her favorite recipes and meals, and filled up a cart for me. I was so touched, I was nearly in tears. And my girlfriend did cry when she saw it all. She ended up spending like $100 on us.
Wow.
They finally met a year or so later, and I introduced her as the woman who bought us all that food that one time. She instantly burst into tears, and they hugged. Yeah.
That's wholesome.
Pretty cool story. And, like, that's the one thing, too, is, you know, picking up on stuff like that and, like, noticing if somebody seems like if they're at work or whatever and they're not really packing much of a lunch, or, like, the little things like that, you know, that you can pick up on and be like, I wonder if everything's okay. You know what I mean? I wonder if they might need a little something to help out. I think it's important to kind of keep an eye out for that stuff too, because you never know. You never know people's financial situations, what's going on. And so if you have the means to help out with that, that's super, super cool. So this lady obviously did, and that, you know, made a huge deal, huge difference to them. So very, very cool.
Definitely showed empathy and has empathetic awareness.
Yes, very, very sweet. All right, on to our next story here. This one comes from that same subreddit, and someone also responded saying, "Oh, I have a story to share. I live on the East Coast. My mother, my brother, and my sister, my only family worth caring for, live in Texas. I received a phone call that my brother, who is addicted to Percocets, was in the hospital with massive organ failure. Pancreas, kidney, and liver were all spewing toxins into his blood, and he was unresponsive. My mother booked me a flight for the next morning, and I packed and prepared for a funeral potentially. I get to the airport, and immediately after being dropped off, learn that my flight is 7 hours delayed. I'm sitting there, no cell phone, very little money, and realizing that my brother might die before I can get to him. This older gentleman had been sitting next to me, and after hearing of the delay, turns to me and asks why I'm flying. I'm a little ashamed that my first response is wary suspicion. I tell him a little bit about what's going on, and he smiles and asks to meet me to come to the bar for a drink with him. I refused, thanking him, but I don't trust people, and all I could think of was, what does this guy want from me? He insisted, saying he had a daughter my age, and that he just wanted to talk. I finally relented. We spent the better part of that 6 hours talking about his family and mine, and I learned about his daughter, who was overseas. Never once was he inappropriate or creepy. We finally boarded the plane, and the flight to Dallas proceeded without incident. As I'm getting off the plane and onto the tram to the next gate, he comes up behind me and hands me a $50 bill and says, I can only hope that if my daughter were ever in your situation, someone would be kind enough to look out for her. That should cover you in case you need a cab ride and a phone call or something to eat. Good luck, and I hope your brother makes a speedy recovery. I was immensely humbled. I've come by wariness of strangers honestly, but that renewed some of my faith in mankind.
Wow.
Yeah. Very, very nice and generous.
Defying expectations, too.
Yeah.
Not saying there's anything wrong with being, like, weary of strangers sometimes, but, always, I think it's good to be open to the possibility that they are not being creepy.
That there are good people out there.
That there are good people out there.
For sure. 100%. And yeah, it's interesting how I feel like I see a lot of airport stories.
Yeah, that's true. I was thinking that too. I was like, a lot of these stories seem to happen in an airport.
Yeah, I don't know what it is, but like, obviously airports can also bring out the crazy in people.
Well, I think sometimes people are kind of trapped together,
Yeah,
for
and
potentially
so,
long periods of time, depending on delays or things like that,
Yeah, and so maybe people are just like, I'm here and I can help somebody out because I'm like here anyway. Like,
could have used the therapy llama.
She could have from our last
Call
episode.
back to our last
Therapy llama.
Could have used Panda
or
Panda
Benny.
the llama.
Yeah, exactly. On to our next story here. So this one also comes from that same subreddit, and someone wrote, in all honesty, my lady is a 10. Seriously, not just in the looks department. And I give myself an optimistic 4, again, in every aspect.
Can relate.
So, no. So when I'm falling apart, she still says and gives me all the support I need.
To be clear, I was also talking about the 10 out of 10 part.
Oh, well, thanks. You're a 10 out of 10 too.
I give myself a 5.
No, 10. There's no way I can keep up all the wonderful things that she does for me, but she never asks for anything and manages to not go insane for my constant screw-ups. I'm not a cheater or anything. I'm just sort of boring. I can't really seem to get things right. That's sad. Don't say that about yourself. Aside from that, someone who is a distant friend, we go months without speaking, came to hang out at my place one night, and we got to talking about why there's nothing in the fridge and why I'm always hungry. I made the decision early on not to be a parasite and rely on others to get by in life. It's just me and my lady in a small apartment we paid too much for, so that leaves very little for food, lots of rice and eggs. Anyway, when he's getting ready to leave, he tells me he needs to go to Walmart, the only place open at 3 in the morning. As he starts picking out food, I asked him why he didn't shop closer to home, as it seemed kind of silly to buy food at least 45 minutes away from home. He just kind of laughed and shrugged and kept shopping. I had forgotten the conversation early about my poverty. I'm not really all that comfortable telling people that I'm starving in order to be free. So, after he bought a ton of food, I figured he'd drop me off and go home to get some of his stuff wouldn't melt or defrost. He starts unloading all of his bags, and I'm completely perplexed by now. I'm not really used to things like this, so it took a lot of explaining before he could get it through to me that it was just something nice he wanted to do for me. Again, I never get gifts, and I'm terrible at showing my emotions in any way, so it was difficult to express my gratitude, but I really hope he understands how much it meant that he was willing to feed me and my lady for nothing in return. My brother also did this once with all of his food stamp money. He was in between jobs and having a rough time finding work, but he still spent money he didn't have on feeding me. Things like this, acts of random kindness, are things that stick. I give the most credit to those who do it for nothing. That is true selflessness.
Oh.
Yeah. I'm like, whoa. I think that's really sweet that he didn't pick up on what was going on, as he's like, let's go to Walmart at 3 a.m. and I know we're over like 45 minutes away from my house and close to your house, it didn't clock that might be what's happening and stuff like that until he was unloading it into his house.
To be fair, it was at 3 a.m., so maybe the thought process isn't fully...
I mean, that's true too, but it's just sweet that he was like, what? When he got home and he's like, this is for you. I just think that's oh, it just hits you in the feels when you read that. It's like, oh my gosh. And I also understand he was saying I don't know how to properly express my gratitude and how much that meant and stuff.
Yeah,
and
that's hard to express.
It's so
gratitude
hard.
Sometimes.
It's so hard, and it's so hard when you really need help with something to we've talked about, it's hard to ask for help, but it's also hard you feel when someone goes out of their way like that for you, you're like, oh, I feel bad now that you went out of your way for me for that, hearing about how his brother spent all of his food stamp money on him, like that. And so I can completely get that, understand that feeling too, and relate to that. It's like, oh, but I feel bad that you went out of your way for me, but also I'm so incredibly touched that you did that. Oh my gosh. It's such a hard thing to express that level of gratitude for that kind of a thing. So yeah, very, very wholesome all around. On to our news article for today. This one's pretty crazy. So this one comes from CBSNews.com, and it is titled, "A man ate at the same Florida restaurant every day for a decade. When he stopped showing up, the chef went looking for him."
Oh, wow.
So, here we go.
Every day for a decade?
Every day for
Never went on vacation? Never out of town?
For 10 years. I guess not. So
that's commitment.
The restaurant is called the Shrimp Basket in Pensacola, Florida. And every day for the last 10 years, Charlie Hicks, who's age 78, comes in, orders the same order every day, twice a day. So he gets it for lunch and dinner. He always orders a cup of gumbo, light on the rice, and asks to hold the cracker. So that's what he orders every day, twice a day. Well, the chef got to know him a lot because he was coming in so frequently, Chef Donald Stallworth. And he was just kind of like their regular. They just expected him every day until all of a sudden in September, he just kind of stopped showing up for several days. And the chef got really concerned because he's like, this is not usual for this guy. Is he okay? So he left work in the middle of his shift and drove to that guy's apartment. And he knocked on the door repeatedly but got no answer. And right when he was going to leave, he heard a voice say help from inside. He opened up the door and found the customer laying on the ground. Didn't know what condition he was in. Brought him to the hospital. They don't know how long he'd been lying there. It might have been a few days. He was severely dehydrated and he had 2 broken ribs. So I'm guessing he must have fallen, it sounds like, and hurt himself and wasn't able to get up. But because the chef went and found him, he survived. And thanks to the staff of the shrimp basket, he'd never be alone again. Because while he was recovering in the hospital, they started bringing him his order at the hospital to feed him. And then they went out and helped him find a new apartment right next to the restaurant so that all the employees could keep a watchful eye on him. And they even got him new appliances and fixed up his new place for him.
Wow.
Yeah, the chef says to Hicks, "I'm glad to have you back, buddy," after he came back to the restaurant for the first time in months. Hicks sat back down at his favorite table and ordered his favorite dish. Nothing had changed except their bond. "We made a connection," Hicks told CBS News. "We made a connection." And then the chef says, "He's that uncle. He's that grandfather. He's that best friend. He's all in one." Yeah.
Dang.
Isn't
That's
that
crazy.
amazing?
Well, it's weird. The interesting thing about, because, we've talked about recurring customers on the show
Yes.
before. We've experienced it both, as customer service workers and also being customers, like how much of an impact or impression one can make just by being a weekly regular.
Right.
Like we've experienced, going to a restaurant and like even just going once a week and like, yep, they know our order. Like that's that order, you can just be identified. Like the most embarrassing is when we have a special like burger order that like, is very custom burger and like the kitchen identifies our order and like has like caught mistakes like when they're written down wrong or something.
Like that's not, I don't think that's right.
Oh, maybe we should go to that restaurant a little less because it's too identifiable,
Exactly.
but to go every day, not even just every day, but twice every day.
Yeah, and I have to order the same order each time too.
I can kind of see why there's that different kind of connection, because again, just the connection that you can see from once a week versus every day for 10 years.
That's crazy. That's super crazy.
But even with that it is like crazy, like a step up that far and above, and be concerned, to show that concern.
Yeah, to go to his apartment and be like, is he okay? That, like, especially with an older customer like that. I mean, that's super scary, and you hear stories about that, like someone falling and stuff and not being able to reach the phone or whatever to be able to call for help, and that's super, when they live alone, that's super scary. And so the fact that the chef thought about that and was like, I'm gonna go check on them to make sure they're okay, and all the stuff that followed afterward with them bringing him gumbo in the hospital, finding him
bringing his order.
That's so freaking cute. Yeah. I love that so much. And then like getting him an apartment that's right next to the restaurant so he can just walk over and then they can keep an eye on him and make sure he's okay every day. Like, what on earth? That is the sweetest thing ever. It's just like, you don't hear about this kind of stuff very often, but when you do, it's just like, that's super cool. Super, super cool. And it's neat that, this guy who's living on his own and stuff now has like friends almost like out of these workers there that he sees every day, and like they've kind of got a bond going, and I think that's really, really awesome. So
a true regular.
And just like our last episode, we're gonna end off with just a little different segment here, just about positive content or shows or things to consume that instead of, sometimes we get stuck like, I don't know what to watch, I'm just gonna scroll on my phone. So it's kind of fun to have stuff lined up. And do you have one lined up for us?
Yeah, again, like this has been mentioned in the podcast before, specific examples in the past, but the show Ted Lasso on Apple TV, I'd say, is very wholesome and very uplifting and R-rated. Like there's definitely a lot of language and stuff like that, but the overall, like the humor throughout and the ultimate message of each episode and each season is very uplifting and wholesome, and kind of makes you want to believe,
Yeah, it's true. Like they literally have a poster in the movie. It's like iconic. It says "Believe." Ted Lasso is played by Jason Sudeikis, and he's just like the most. And we've talked about that. There was that one episode where the actor Jason Sudeikis like did that whole benefit for amputees and stuff like that. So he's a really wholesome dude in real life, and he's a very wholesome dude in the show as Ted Lasso. He's very funny. He's kind of a happy-go-lucky guy,
and he just believes in everybody and the good in everybody, and trying to wants to help everybody be the best version of themselves.
It's very wholesome. That's a good show. Very, very good show. Highly
again,
recommend.
rated R. Don't watch with the kids.
Yeah.
Just because of the language.
And then this is an oldie but a goodie. It's been around for a long time. It's been ended for a long time, but I highly recommend. We've been rewatching it, and it's very wholesome, and every episode has its own little message to
right.
it. And they always have like a voiceover talking about the message of the episode by the end. And it's a feel good show. Modern Family. It's on Hulu, so you can watch all the seasons on there currently. And it's such a feel good show. There's always like funny moments and misunderstandings among the characters, but they always end up being one happy family and like figuring things out and just becoming better people throughout the series. And it's just very, very fun to watch. It's very funny. So highly, highly recommend if you're looking for just like a quick because usually I think they're like 25-minute episodes.
20-some-minute episodes.
Yeah, so they're short, they're fun, they're digestible easily. It's fun to have it on quick, just whenever. So yeah, highly, highly recommend.
It got us through the flu like
It did.
beginning of the year.
Oh my god, we got so sick.
Which I'm pretty sure we've talked on the show before, so we'll spare you those details. But and then I'm sure it's probably a show we're going to in the immediate postpartum as well. I'm guessing.
Yes,
I'm guessing
it's
just an easy show to throw on.
And every episode is super funny, and it just makes you smile. Like there's just a lot of cute moments too throughout. So
yeah,
highly, highly recommend. And with that, we will end today's podcast episode. Tune in a couple weeks for our next episode. Like he mentioned, we've been batch recording these, so there's gonna be a time jump for us. We might have some stories.
We might look very different, or we might look exactly the same. I have no idea.
I won't have a bump probably though, so
hopefully I won't either.
It's gonna be interesting. But yeah, so be sure to tune in for that. And then if you have any positive stories that you would like us to share on here, please send them to us at upliftingpositivestories@gmail.com. Or we also have a subreddit, which is Uplift Positive Stories, and you can post them on there as well. We'd love to see them.
And if you're watching on YouTube, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button or leave a comment.
That'd be awesome. Thanks so much for joining us, everybody, and have a great rest of your week.
And stay positive.